at the Big House is cool. It's a fun place to go watch a game, and it'll be even funner when Ohio State gets to go there next year and win.
Ryan Day winning a national title and then having his golf cart slam into a brick wall feels like a great metaphor for heading into the offseason. It's the Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, Michigan, Ohio State, your garbage-free college football podcast from River Radio Ministries and presented by Elevated Integrity Construction.
Can I correct you real quick?
You cannot.
It is the 2024 national champion Ohio State Buckeyes.
We have got to be, like outside of a team going like repeating, going back to back, we've got to be the only podcast in the world who covers two separate college football teams who just had them go back to. Is the Rivalry Podcast back-to-back defending national champions?
Some have said.
Many people are saying right now.
Word around town.
On social media at Rival Pod, you can see some of the fantastic photos, videos, and stuff that Mr. JP took from Atlanta.
We got way more coming, too, because I haven't even looked through my camera roll on my actual camera. Everything I was putting up was like night of. It was happening around me.
The stuff you've got up right now, and I say this objectively as a college football fan and as your friend, is really, really good. So be sure to follow that at Rival Pod. It's disgusting, but give it a follow anyway. And rivalpod.com as well, where you can see a full gallery of photos. I'm sure that you'll be going through.
That'll be going up later today.
Articles, support the podcast, all that stuff. Rivalpod.com. We're going to break the ice, though, with a little bit of a wheel route. This is probably my least favorite episode that we've done.
I've been waiting.
In many, many seasons, to be quite honest with you. All right, today's wheel route question, which if you're not watching on YouTube at Rival Pod, you can right now. Which player is a mover and shaker next season? You wrote this, so as usual, I'm going to have you go first.
Yeah, what player do you think is going to have kind of step up next season? I think for me with Ohio State, it'd be easy to point your finger and go quarterback position because you're losing Will Howard.
Yeah.
You got the transfer in Donaldson at running backs, and Judkins could, although I think he probably won't. He could return. I'm not concerned with the running back room. So it'd be easy to look at wide receiver and go, well, you're losing Ibuka and all that. I'm going to go Carnell Tate for this one. A little surprised. I think the quarterback's the obvious choice. But I think Carnell Tate, you've seen flashes. I mean, the guy still had a phenomenal season as wide receiver 3 on this team. To me, he's shown that he's a weapon. And there were rumblings. I know somebody asked him after the win, which first off, this is just gross journalism, but somebody immediately after they win the championship is in the locker room asking Carnell Tate about transferring. And he laughs and goes, I'm going to enjoy this one with my team, which people are then starting to read into on what's it look like. Carnell Tate is wide receiver 2 going into next year, unless he transfers. And watch, he'll do that as we're recording this podcast, and I'll look like a buffoon. But we
are recording Wednesday morning in case there's any timestamps people want to check.
Right now, he is a clear number 2 receiver. Jeremiah Smith, the leaps and bounds number 1. I think that's just obvious. He's got a chance to really, really showcase his skill set next year. And I am jacked about the potential of this guy. So I've got Carnell Tate as my player to look out for next year.
I think that's I'm going to be honest. I think that's a really good choice. Ohio State, and maybe we'll get into this later, or we'll talk about it in the offseason for sure. I mean, Ohio State's going to look a lot different next year, right? And not to
especially defensively.
Well, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but I mean, there's a reason why Natty or Bust was the philosophy for this team this year, is because the question was, if not now, when? Because the talent that was loaded across the roster. Now, Ohio State and Michigan both have the advantage of being these blue blood programs that can dig deep into the NIL pockets, that can reload, that can bring guys into the transfer portal. But what does that team look like? There's a lot of unknowns, but one of the things that you do know is that Carnell Tate, again, assuming, yes, anybody can transfer at any time. Jeremiah Smith could transfer to Miami as we're recording this. Please. But
don't.
But Carnell Tate, assuming he's going to be part of the team next year, is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
You've got guys like Brandon Ennis, who was a 5-star recruit who's shown flashes throughout the season.
Ain't nobody in the country worried about Brandon Ennis.
He's going to get an amplified role, but this team's going to look drastically different. But Carnell Tate.
But I agree. I think Carnell Tate is going to provide that Emeka Egbuka role.
100%.
And that's a big shoes to fill. But I agree. I think he can. I had not been impressed with him until I feel like late in the season. He started kind of coming into his own. He was a
sleeper pick, though, because, I mean, he even, I think, I don't know the exact number, but he had 680-something yards not too long ago as a wide receiver 3. I mean, just an insane numbers for that guy. He would have been the leading receiver on Notre Dame's team by a couple hundred yards, and he's our third option.
Listen, a potato could have been the leading receiver on Michigan's roster this year. Mover and shaker for next season for Michigan. I feel like this is an easy one if you pay attention to Michigan, especially if you watch the bowl game. But Jordan Marshall is the answer here. Mm-hmm. Jordan Marshall is a freshman running back. Pick. And he is, and the coaches said this. They mentioned this on the broadcast during the Alabama game. During ReliQuest Bowl, they said the coaches have already noted a lot of similarities to Blake Corum. And if you watch him run, you watch the way he plays, you can see it already. And Michigan has for years now not had a shortage of talent in the running back room. And they continue to have recruited well, and they've got guys on the team right now, and Jordan Marshall is going to be the big one. And he's also like, not to, I guess maybe that's kind of 1A, but 1B is going to be Justice Haynes, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're going to have that. It'll look different, but that Corum and Edwards duo thing, that Haskins and Corum duo, Michigan's going to be able to utilize that really well with Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. But Marshall's my answer here. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player. Saw flashes already. And it's hard to believe we're like, 3 months out from spring.
I can't wait. I'm already ready for the next season.
Want to say a big thanks here, as this is our season 6 finale. I want to say a big thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction, because maybe you feel like Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. You need to transfer in some help because what you're doing isn't working. Aaron Carroll and his team, Elevated Integrity Construction, the portal to a successful project. They will leave you wowed at the finished product. They communicate openly and honestly. So if you've got a church, home, or business build, go with the folks with integrity in their name. It's elevatedintegrity.com. And we thank them for, they've been longtime supporters of this podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks for supporting again this season. We appreciate you, Aaron, and your team. Also want to say a big thanks to the Varsity Network powered by Learfield. We are part of that network this season, a must-have for every college football fan. Free to download if you haven't in the App Store or Google Play Store. The live college football games, podcasts just like this one. Find tailored content, search for your school, or search for the Rivalry podcast in the Varsity Network app. And then, as mentioned just a few minutes ago, rivalpod.com. Great way to support this podcast. It's a small budget podcast. Mm-hmm. All right. We're talking before we go on mic about, I got an Airbnb in Atlanta and that's going to run us this much how much. So your support, whether you want to get yourself a t-shirt, whether you want to do the buy me a coffee route and throw a little bit of money this way, it helps. And it helps now too, especially. It helps a ton during the season, but it also helps now as we head into the off season, as off season planning looks ahead to the 2025-26 season. That means a lot. So consider doing that. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for following. Thanks for supporting. However you want to do that, we appreciate it. RivalPod on Instagram and Twitter, and rivalpod.com. There's a ton of different storylines coming out of this game, but let's start with the game itself. And obviously, being the resident Buckeye, you're riding high right now. Oh. You start us off here. Like, let's talk about the actual game, and we'll get into the narratives here in a minute.
Yeah, I just feel, and I was disrespectful to Notre Dame for the entire season, and I'm going to stay that way. I'm not changing up.
We were so close to, hey, I called them a fraud, and I said if they played well, I would apologize. And now you're going to apologize to absolutely no one.
Absolutely nobody. And here's my thoughts. I will give some credit though. I'm not changing
credit.
I'm not changing my tone.
Oh, you're trash.
Because this game was one-sided for a majority of it. I mean, let's be honest. Ohio State punted once the entire game. The time they punted was at the end of the game when they were intentionally trying to just dwindle the clock down to nothing. And they ran the ball 3 straight times and then punted it. They were not being aggressive. The other time that they turned the ball over, Emeka Egbuka fumbled it. They were driving. He caught that ball and fumbled it at Notre Dame's 21, which you can't have that turnover, sure. But Notre Dame's defense was doing nothing to stop. Once Ohio State got up 31-7, they took their foot off the gas. That's something against Ohio State. They started playing lack coverage. They started letting them, they started playing defense to not give up a home run play, but they were fine giving up big chunk plays. But they just weren't going to let you get behind them and get a 70-something yard touchdown pass to Greathouse or whatever else it may be and let you get a quick score. But they were going to let you march down the field and then trust their red zone defense. But this was not a close game. The score might indicate it was a 34-23 game. Anybody that watched this game knew that Ohio State was in control for a majority of it. They had me nervous at the end.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're talking a big game here, but I received a text that said this isn't any fun, followed by if we lose, I will never recover.
And in that moment, I felt that way because at the time we were up 8 and we had just let them score. And I knew that we were going to come back out and we were going to stop being aggressive. We were going to continue to go and run. And then Ryan Day said, JP, you're wrong. I'm not going to do that. It's going to be 3rd down and 11. And I'm going to throw a bomb to Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
And I thought, and we've preached on it. We're going to talk more about it later on. But I've talked about it in numerous podcast episodes where I said this was a turning point for Ryan Day and this team and this program. After that game at the end of November, are you going to cave in and suffocate yourself? Or are you going to turn the corner like what Harbaugh did back in the 2020 season? And right now, the proof is he's turning that corner because that's not a decision that I would have seen Ryan Day do before. I think in years past, you would have seen Ryan Day run the ball again, punt it. Throwing a deep bomb to Jeremiah Smith in a crucial part of the game is, I mean, just a call.
Well, and it feels like, you know, there are different points. You know, I can be objective enough to look at it and go, there are different points where things like it just makes sense. Like, oh yeah, of course, that's the thing that was going to happen there to help this game, right? So again, you know, one of the big thing for me is going to be, you know, for Michigan last year going back to the Rose Bowl. Of course, it was Blake Corum ripping off an incredible run to effectively seal the game, and then the defense with a goal line stand. Of course, that's what it was because that's what that team was predicated on: Blake Corum and that suffocating defense. So, of course, it made sense in the Texas game that Jack Sawyer is the one who rips the ball out. And in this game, of course, it made sense that Jeremiah Smith is the one who seals
the one that ices it. There are other things.
That's one of the, like, just objectively, that's one of the beauties of sports and one of the beauties of college sports in particular, and why, even though we support obviously vastly different teams, why we both love this game so much and why this rivalry means so much is because there is that poetic nature to sports, and there's not really another way around it, and we wouldn't want it any other way.
100%. There are other key things in this game that we were right on, and then there were some things that surprised me, because as much as I hammered down that Notre Dame just didn't have the offense, I think that still stands somewhat true. Ohio State did what I thought they had to do. They won the ground game. They had 214 yards compared to Notre Dame's 53. Jeremiah Love, who famously after beating Penn State said, "We won Ohio State." My guy, you had 4 carries for 3 yards.
Okay, that's not what he. Hold on though. That's not what he said.
I understand the context behind.
What he said
wanted
was,
to play the best.
I want Ohio State to beat Texas because he thought Ohio State was better, and he wanted to have to play the best to win.
Well, and he sure got him, and he did nothing when he had the chance.
So your quote is completely out of context.
He got him, and he did not do well. 4 carries, 3 yards. The other thing was Ohio State was 9 of 12 on 3rd downs. 2 of those resulted in field goals anyways, and the last one was to waste time just so they could punt the ball to run out the clock. Notre Dame, who even in the episode leading up to the game, I said, I think they have the defense. They did not. Ohio State could have, had they stayed aggressive the entire game, I truthfully believe would have scored every single possession of the game.
I think there's a balance there. I mean, certainly, like, there's no question Notre Dame's defense did not show up in the way that they were expected to, and I'll at least say in the way that they had to if they were going to win this game. I don't think you can. This goes back to something we talked about a couple weeks ago. You know, where Ohio State is sometimes like, well, we only beat ourselves. No one ever does anything against us. We take their foot off the. No, Notre Dame slammed the door shut there late in the game. And their defense was a big chunk of that, creating the turnover from Igbuka and the offense driving down the field.
On the turnovers.
It's not just Ohio State decided to turtle. It's Notre Dame slammed the door and said, we're going to try and mount a comeback. But I agree. So
I mean, some of it, sure. I think if you're looking the turnover for sure, I'll give you the turnover because that was just a great play by the defensive back to get in there and pry the ball loose.
And forcing the punt as well was not just, hey, we're going to run the clock. It was, Notre Dame shut the door on them.
They shut the run game down, but it wasn't. You saw the change in play calling from Ohio State. Ohio State was not passing the ball. When it's 3rd down and long and you're running the ball, that is not the play calling that Ohio State had done all game long.
But also credit to Notre Dame, though, for forcing them into that position. And you are correct in this sense. You're correct in the sense of Ohio State decided to get really, really conservative. And the parallels being drawn on social media to how the Michigan game went, obviously vastly different gameplay, game flow. But the conservative nature, everyone started getting a little bit nervous. I don't know if you felt that in stadium.
Well, and that's why I was texting you, because I knew, and I want to talk about a decision that Marcus Freeman did that at the time I didn't understand, but now that I've thought through it, it makes more sense. And I don't remember if he was the one that said this or if it was another, because I listened to some Notre Dame podcasts on the way back just to kind of hear their thoughts recapping the game.
For sure.
And the one thing about that was obviously they're down, 16 at the time? They were down 16. Yeah. It was 31-15, and it's 4th and 9, 4th and goal. He decides to kick a field goal, and everybody is harping on him, myself included. I'm looking at the guy next to me, and I'm like, why are you kicking it? Why are you not going for it? You're going against the best red zone defense in the entire nation. 9 yards against them on 4th down is not going to be an easy get.
No.
And I think, and I could be misquoting this, I think when Marcus Freeman was asked about it, he said his reason for going was that he would rather be down 13 than down 14 or down 16. Sorry. And he knew that it was going to be a 2-possession game anyways, but it was a lot easier to get 14 points than to get 16. And so
I think you finish your thought.
And my thought, because while I personally would have still gone for it, I can understand how you would have gotten to the point to kick it, because you're down 16. Let's say you get the field goal, which they didn't. You get the field goal, you're down 13. You know Ohio State's game plan is kill the clock. And you trust your defense to go out there and to stop 3 run plays, get your team the ball back. The ball on offense had started to move a little because Ohio State had played back to not give up the home run. You knew you were going to at least get the chance to score again, and then you got to get the onside kick and then go after it again. So I understand the reasoning. I still probably would have gone for it, knowing how Ohio State had been able to move the ball. I don't know if I would have trusted the defense as much as he did, but I do kind of understand it. But I think those were the things that killed it. Ohio State, 214 yards on the ground. They were 9 of 12 on 3rd downs. Yep. 2 of those misses were still points. They still got 6 points out of them. I was all around impressed. I thought it was just an excellent game plan. I loved the gutsy call to throw it to Jeremiah Smith at the end. I thought Will Howard shut a lot of the haters up. I think it was Emmanuel Ocho came out and said, Will Howard's the worst quarterback in the playoffs.
Yeah, Emmanuel Ocho.
That guy
he missed. He missed. And by the way, I actually really enjoy Ocho. He was he missed. Yeah. He completely missed on that.
Even if you would have said at the start of the playoffs he was the worst.
That's a Desmond Howard take.
Yeah, I would have disagreed with you back then. I say that
as the Michigan man. That's a Desmond Howard take.
Yeah, I don't know how you walked into this championship game. I would have given you the Dylan Gabriel's better than Will Howard. Like any of those, sure. Even the Quinn Ewers is over. I would have fine, whatever.
Not Riley
Leonard. But I will say hats off to him, because the stuff that I thought that the Notre Dame offense would excel in, they didn't. They kind of flipped the script. I talked all preview of the championship game about, well, they're not going to be able to throw the ball. And they didn't really in the first half. But then the second half, that's where all the plays were made.
Well, to be fair, Notre Dame didn't do much of anything in the first half. Like they
didn't really get the chance.
The massive swing from, and this is where college football is just funny, right? Like the massive understanding that Ohio State is probably going to win this game. Notre Dame gets the ball first and takes 10 minutes off the clock. Mm-hmm. With I think Riley Leonard ran 9 times.
Yeah, there were like 3 4th down conversions on that first drive.
Ohio State could not stop it. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at my empty living room, hyping up the crowd that is just my living room, because my wife did not care about this game.
Yours too?
Yes. She was kind enough to ask about the game later, but she did not care in the moment. But so I'm watching this game going, Notre Dame just took 10 minutes off the clock and Ohio State couldn't stop them. And they got 7 out of it. Not just a weird field goal or something, including at least 1 4th down conversion.
Oh, it was numerous. I want to say it was like 2 or 3.
So, I mean, that immediately to me went, oh, we might have ourselves a different football game than we thought. And next thing you know, Ohio State blows it wide open. But yeah, I mean, you have to give credit to Riley Leonard for the way the game started. He did not look good for a huge chunk of that game. And then Notre Dame mounted this comeback, and a lot of that was predicated on Riley Leonard having to make plays. Mm-hmm. And he made them. Just because I want to go back to like the field goal thing, I can get where he's going to come from with that.
Yeah.
But at some point, coaches are overthinking it.
Sure.
Because again, like when Notre Dame suddenly finds themselves down 8 late in the game, you're looking at it going, man, maybe they should have gone for it. Because obviously, hindsight's 2020. They didn't get the field goal anyway. I don't understand down 16 how you don't go for it there. Mm-hmm. You have to get a touchdown there. And the fact that they did not go for it and then find themselves down 8, it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe instead of shanking a field goal, maybe we should have taken a shot. Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing. A penalty resets the downs too. Mm-hmm. Igbinosun, I don't remember if it was that drive or not, but Igbinosun's out here being the kid on the group project who does nothing and still gets an A.
Well, this was the same thing.
Why not target him and let him pull
Honestly, it was the
down?
entire Ohio State secondary because Denzel Burke had one, Jordan Hancock had one, Igbinosun had some. It was almost, and this sounds, I'm not going to spend time dissing my team because we just won a national championship, but if I'm an offense and I'm offensive coordinator for an opposing team and I'm playing Ohio State, my whole game plan is to throw the deep ball because you saw them. That's how they lost to Oregon at the beginning of the year. Yep. And you're watching this. That's how Texas was able to find some success late in the game. And now you're looking at Notre Dame and it's, I mean, Greathouse is crisping every single person in the vicinity. And if it's even close, he's getting grabbed and held onto. And I mean, even on the sideline, I'm seeing it happen in real time and I'm going, I see a handful of your jersey and I'm not even a ref.
Yeah. Well, and I have maintained I have maintained that throughout, at least since the Oregon game and again, it is weird to be like, well, let's nitpick the national champions, but also I'm going to look at it and go, I have not been impressed all season with that Ohio State secondary. And the fact, again, hindsight's 2020. Notre Dame makes a decision, it doesn't pay off because Jesus looked down at Marcus Freeman and said, "Son, what are you doing?" And said, "Absolutely not. We're not kicking field goals here."
There are two other things that I wanted to hit on real quick. And the first thing you're not going to like, but I thought of it actually driving in this morning. My brother in
Christ, I don't like any of this.
But I had a realization driving into work this morning as we were getting ready to record this because as much I wasn't really on social media as much during the game. I was trying to upload pictures, but
we're just going.
Yeah, but I'm just going. But I saw so much, and I've seen it the past couple days of Michigan fans all over social media that are constantly just tweeting, "Yeah, but you still lost to us," and it gives me the same exact vibes as Jack Sawyer had at the end of the game this year. When he's shouting at Michigan players and he's going, "Yeah, but your season's over." And it was cringy and it was salty then. And Michigan fans, while I do think, and this isn't me saying that game doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
It is the same vibe to me. And I'm disapproving of both. I've said it before with Jack. I've never once stood on that behavior, but it's so cringy to me because that's just the same vibe. It's the same thing Michigan fans mock Jack Sawyer for and say, "Oh, but look at Jack crying over there." And then you're doing the same thing. You're doing the exact same thing.
It's one of those weird things. I was telling my wife Lindsay before coming in to record this. She's like, don't be too frustrated on the record. And it's like, no, I said, I'm fine. I said, here's the thing. And if you're not in this rivalry, it will not make any sense. But you just can't let your rivals or your friends who are rivals have anything nice.
Nope.
That's the rule. And I said this, I think it was last week, maybe a couple episodes ago. Why do you think that in 2023, after Michigan won the national championship, every Buckeye made it their life's mission to send an asterisk after everything? Because Connor Simmons had an impact on the game or any of the playoff games? No, because we can't let you have anything nice. That was the Buckeye mentality to Michigan. The Michigan mentality to Ohio State is now the exact same thing. Why am I going to remind you that Jack Sawyer and the seniors went 0-4 in their careers and have no gold pants? Because I can't let you enjoy
gold trophy.
Because I can't let you enjoy anything nice. That is what the rivalry is built on. So if you're trying, Michigan fans, if you're trying to convince Ohio State fans to not enjoy a national title, you're not going to get there.
It ain't working.
And in Ohio State fans, if you were trying last year to get Michigan fans not to enjoy a national title, it didn't work. This is how the rivalry operates. It makes no sense. But you can't let your friends have anything nice.
100%.
Ever.
I did think it was weirdly poetic that the game ended on a somewhat Hail Mary to a right side to Jeremiah Smith. I thought that was a little poetic. At the end of the day, the last impressive thing that I thought just overall with this Ohio State team, the final AP polls came out yesterday. Ohio State this season ended up beating the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 9th, and 10th best teams in the nation. They obviously taking the number 1 spot. That is an insane resume and speaks such volumes as to, and this is where I'll give Michigan credit, because this is where I think as a Michigan fan, you can hang your hat on. You beat this team.
Michigan receiving votes in the final poll. Thank you very much.
I thought they were ranked. I thought I saw, this was a separate thing where they said.
We're receiving votes though. We got the little RV next to us. So that's good.
But this is where, if you're a Michigan fan, I think you hang your hat. Is you beat a team that was as talented as Ohio State was, that Ohio State went off and beat the number 2, I'll say it again, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 9th, and 10th best team in the nation. And you were still able to overcome that. I think that speaks volumes to you guys and that hard game. That's the only time I'll ever give you guys real credit.
And I'll reciprocate too, though. Like, it's the season. Listen, it's the season finale. We can be salty. We can also be kind sometimes. Ohio State's run was fantastic. It will be interesting, and this is not to take anything away from that. It will be interesting to see moving forward, now that you've got 12 teams in the playoffs. National champions are going to have to go through that sort of gauntlet. So in one sense, it's unique and it's still going to be admirable if you're a college football fan. But I wonder how unique that's going to be, though. Yeah. Given the way that is going to shape. Given the way that the new playoff is going to be formatted, you're going to almost have to beat 5 top 5 teams or whatever to win this thing.
100%. And I think this was a frustrating thing. If you can't tell, I had a 9-hour drive yesterday, and so I listened
show the camera though. You are sporting a national championship shirt.
I forgot my photo vest. They let me keep that. It's back in my office. I forgot to bring it.
Did you get like a bag of confetti and stuff too?
I did. I was on the field. I felt a little bit like a loser, but I was scooping up as much as I could and shoving it.
That's the thing too, where I was telling somebody, I was like, I was super stoked for you, not on a football level, but as a person. I was stoked for you as a person, stoked for that the podcast got the chance to be there. But also I was going, I am more than a little bit jealous because Michigan just got this and I didn't get to be there because Kirk Herbstreit's dog got credentialed over me. And
how dare you disrespect the GOAT, Ben.
R.I.P. Ben. I'm okay now. But anyway, that's very cool.
Yeah, but I was listening to a lot of sport podcasts, recapping the game. I listened to some Notre Dame stuff, and I kept hearing this one opinion, and I disagree with it heavily, and I would disagree with it had Ohio State not even won the championship. But a lot of people complaining, and we talked briefly about this last episode, about how this team didn't deserve to get the chance that they got because in years past, it would have knocked them out of the playoffs, having 2 losses. And in my mind, I'm going, okay, so everybody in the universe complains that 4 teams isn't enough. And we want an expanded playoff.
Not everybody.
Because
not everyone.
Because we see, and while I'm kind of the in-between. I don't think 12 teams is I think that's more than enough. I would go 8 probably. Yeah. 10 would be my max. But I think 4 is too small. And I think this year proved that because clearly Ohio State was the best team in the nation. And I've said it numerous times on this podcast. At the end of the day, as a football fan, I want to see, I'm going to pull a line from Jeremiah Love. I want to see the best play the best. And I think this format proved in some ways you're going to get that. You're not going to ever see a Georgia TCU rematch where the championship you can turn off by 5 minutes into the first quarter because it's 30-0.
At halftime, I thought we were there.
That's what you don't want to see. And I heard so many people talking about this after the game where they go, it just doesn't mean anything because Ohio State in years past would have been knocked out with the loss to Michigan.
But that's not the format, people.
I think
even I can admit that that's not the format. But to me, it's like
you spent all this time and your main complaint was having 4 teams left some of the best teams in the nation out. And now you go into this season, and in my opinion, even if it wasn't Ohio State, let's say you rebranded whatever the Buckeyes were this year and named whoever else.
Let's say Texas won.
Yeah, Texas won. To me, you saw the best team. And regardless of what I've said about Notre Dame, whatever, they were the best team out of that side of the bracket.
For sure. Because they came out of the bracket.
Whether I think that bracket was strong, I think there's reseeding changes, sure.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, as a football guy, I don't ever want to go into a championship game and see a blowout, unless it's the Buckeyes and they're winning, obviously. But I want to see a competitive, good, gritty football game. And so I hate that opinion because to me, you're going to leave out a team like Ohio State who was clearly, what challenge do you want them to have overcome? They had to play the hardest team every single round.
They had the gauntlet.
They had the gauntlet.
I think I both get it and agree with it and also hate it at the same time. Like this is going to lead into something we're about to get to, and I'm going to try not to go into it quite yet. But it is true that in years past, Ohio State would not have gone in. Like Michigan would have ended Ohio State's season again. And there is something to be said about the loss of that. And we'll get, I'm not going to go too far. We're going to get into that. There's something to be said about the loss of winning the game, the winner of the game effectively ending the other team's season. There's something to be said for the loss of that. At the same time, though, I mean, the format is the format. Well, Ohio State wouldn't have got in if it weren't 12. And again, I'm saying this if you're new to the podcast, I'm saying this as the Michigan guy here. Ohio State wouldn't have got in if it weren't a 12-team format. Right, but it is. You could also have done the same thing in 2014 and said, well, Ohio State wouldn't have got in if it was the BCS. Correct, but it's not. And so at some point, it just comes off as whiny. And again, I'm saying this as the rival in this situation. At some point, it's just kind of whiny. But I also understand the sentiment behind it because how does that affect the game itself? And, Ohio State has proven twice now to be the kings of when you open up the door, we can get in and win the whole thing. And so, that's frustrating, but that's the format that everybody agreed to, whether they like or not, to play in the college football playoff this is the window.
And you
just have to fit in the window. And that's one of the interesting things too, is there's been talk about format changes for 2025. Ross Bjork back during the Tennessee week had said, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to change anything in 25, maybe 26, there's going to be some changes. And here we are a month later, and that's basically the same mentality and the same speech from the College Football Playoff Committee proper, which is we'd like to see changes, but we're not sure what they're going to be.
I mean, it's the first year. It's the same thing with anything in life. You try it once, you figure out the stuff that needs fixed, you rework it, it's fine. They're going to get it figured out.
Here's what I can effectively tell you. And I wish it weren't this way because I'm more like you. I would be okay to go back to 4. I would be okay with 8. I don't even want to see 10 teams in this thing.
I'm at an 8.
Regardless, you're not going to see that. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, and I hope, listen, I would love to be wrong. I'd love for this clip to get replayed and we run it back and whatever. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you're at 12 teams. It's not going back.
Yeah.
You will, you're likely to see the auto bid stuff change. You're likely to see maybe the conference championship format itself change. You're likely to see reseeding. But will you see that in 25? It doesn't sound like the committee knows, so don't bank money on that. I wonder if
eventually they'll go away from even having conference championship games and they'll just crown whoever has the best record at the end of the regular season.
I'm going to say right now, I know the Big 12 used to do that. I hate that.
I do too, but I would get it that. Given if you're going to go the direction you're going.
For a conference with the history of the Big 10, we're winning a Big 10 championship, and again, college football landscape changes. I understand that. We're not stupid. Like we all get that. The landscape has completely changed. But back in the day, like there's got to be at some point, and I'm going to jump on a soapbox for 10 seconds.
Go right on ahead.
As a society, we are so enamored with like the flashiest, newest, best thing. Can we get this thing right now? Can we change this? Sometimes that's not what you really need. Sometimes you need something a little bit older. And so from the football perspective, when you look at the Big Ten Conference, you go back in the day, like the conference championship meant something. Why? Because it meant, you play Michigan, Ohio State, whatever. Okay, great. Like you get to go to the Rose Bowl, go play USC or whoever, whatever. The Big Ten championship meant something like that. That still has to mean something. Like we have lost so much about and I'm not going to wax and wail and whine about amateurism and whatever else. We've lost so much of college football. There's so much that's good.
Yeah.
But we've lost so much of it. I would hate to see a conference championship game taken away. We've got to find a way to better position the teams that play in it and the teams that win it. And I don't think that's up. I mean, it is up for debate, but I don't think anyone would disagree with if you keep it. You've got to find a way to reorganize. What do you do with an Oregon? What do you do with a Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, whoever?
And I think they're going to rework a lot of that.
I think you have to.
I've pitched it a handful of times. I think you keep it at 12 because they're, like you said, toothpaste is out of the tube. You're not going to be going back to anything.
No, there's no way.
Let's be honest, the society we live in, the more money you can get, it wouldn't surprise me if they added more teams.
It's why March Madness is like, hey, let's open. Good news, though. Here's what I'll say. You could open this playoff up to a 64-team field, and Michigan State still wouldn't even sniff it.
Oh, it's beautiful. Rutgers would have probably.
Let's not get crazy.
A beautiful sight.
So we've danced around this a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's ask the question, because I think if you're listening to the podcast, you want some recap of the game. If you're on a Michigan Ohio State podcast, or you're Googling, you found the podcast on YouTube, again, hi, welcome, Jace, JP, Michigan Ohio State, all that thing, at Rival Pod across social media. Thanks for subscribing and listening. If you're on a Michigan Ohio State podcast 2 days after a national championship for Ohio State, you are probably curious. The big question, there's two of them. One is about coaching. One is about national titles. Let's ask that one first. Does a national title mean more than beating your rival? And I think there's a butt ton of nuance to this.
Yeah.
Like coming off a national title. And again, I ask questions, then I caveat. Let me give one caveat and let me have you answer. Does a national title mean more than beating your rival, particularly, I mean, I'm talking specifically Michigan, Ohio State, okay? Not Auburn, Alabama, or Duke kind of doesn't like North Carolina. I don't care. No one cares about that. The caveat with this is you're coming off having just won a national title. Michigan won one last year. So like we've both gotten to see some of this. I think the way that you answer this might feel different if your rival's not the one winning the whole thing. But I'm going to ask objectively, does a national title mean more than winning the game? And answer that however you want to.
I'm going to say no. I think it'd be easy, and maybe people are going to look at me crazy for that answer. But as nice as a championship feels, and it doesn't take away from winning a championship, I think it's kind of a two-part answer to this. Winning a championship is an amazing feeling. Being there in person and celebrating, there was not a second in my mind that I was thinking about that game at the end of November while the confetti was dripping down, while I was watching Jack Sawyer and JT hoist the trophy. None of that mattered at the end of November, but it matters at the end of November. There, even walking away from that, I still don't like the taste of that loss at the end of November. It's never going to not sting. While anytime I think somebody talks about this Ohio State team that's in these fan bases, they're going to talk back at the end of November, and they're going to say, yeah, we won a championship. If you're an Ohio State fan, you're going to go, I can't believe this team lost. And if you're Michigan, you're going to go, yeah, they won, but we also beat that team in the most lopsided underdog of the entire history of the rivalry.
Upset in 100+ years of doing it.
And so I think that's proven that it absolutely matters, because even after the game, I'm in the press conference, and Ryan Day, Cody Simon, Will Howard are sitting there, and like 3 of the 7 questions all had something to do with Michigan.
Adversity,
and they brought up,
even if it's under adversity or struggle.
No, they straight up said it.
Oh, did they really?
All the reporters were going, after that loss to Michigan. And I'm like, these guys have confetti dripping from head to toe. Yeah. They've not even showered. It has been 30 minutes, and they just hoisted a gold trophy in the sky.
They just got off a golf cart that crashed into a wall.
Yeah, Ryan Day's got to go and get a massage after this because of whiplash.
He's in the medical tent right now for whiplash.
And they're already asking and comparing, like, where was your mindset? How were you guys able to regroup and become the team that you were? I mean, to me, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the answer is absolutely it matters, because of course it does. It's the greatest rivalry in sports for a reason. If it doesn't matter, you don't get it. Yeah. You just don't get it.
You would not be. I agree with you. I mean, because I think they're both two different. They're both two different things, and yet I think I know the answer, and I think I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Like a national title, and again, I'm pulling from 1,000, because like you. I read this stuff. I listen to podcasts, I listen to sports talk. I get the Michigan side, the Ohio State side. I want to know what people are talking about, whatever. So this is a hodgepodge of opinions, and I'm going, okay, all into one thing here.
I love it. The sound effect was great.
Thank you so much. Like, a national title doesn't come around nearly as often, right? Yeah. A national title is incredibly difficult to win. You don't have you've got a shot every year, but like it's a whole grueling game stretch. The game is 60 minutes. Does it make it harder or easier? I don't know. A national title is still a national title. And that is, I don't even know if it's goal 1A, but it's goal 1. Mm-hmm. The problem is that the other goal 1 is the game.
Yeah, it's not goal 2. It's
and so
A and B.
I think I'd look at it this way, like to win the game, Like Michigan beating Ohio State. So take Ohio State winning a national title out of it for a second. Michigan winning the game and not winning a national title does not taint the win of the game. We go, all right, yeah, of course we won a natty. Of course we won the Big Ten championship. We won the game. Great. Like Texas won the national title. Good for them. Cool. Great. Michigan won the game. Winning a national title without beating your rival, I do think it discolors it a little bit. I don't think it takes anything away from it in one sense, but maybe it does.
I don't know if it does the title as much as the season.
Like a national championship for Ohio State where you didn't beat Michigan. I think it does. I think it takes an ounce away from it because you are going to have to go, well, like it's a national championship, but it's a 2-loss team with a loss to your rival.
But see, I think on the other end of it, I look at it, and the thing that makes me proud about this team is I look at the fight they had to go through to get to the national championship, and I go, okay, it's a 2-loss team, but the one was to Oregon, who was undefeated. It'll always sting losing to that team up north. That's going to be something that sticks. But then I look at who they played in the playoffs, and they played Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and then Notre Dame, the gauntlet. And I go, nobody in their right mind outside of the Buckeye country expected this team to get through that series of teams.
Well, I don't even know if Buckeye country thought that they were
probably
gonna do
half
that,
of them, probably half of them didn't think they'd get past Oregon.
Yeah,
but they did. And so I think there's a sense of, it's one of those things when you talk about this team that you're going to look back and go, I can't believe this team lost to Michigan, and it's going to sting. But then you're going to look at the other end of it and you're going to go, but they still hoisted the trophy and they beat a gauntlet. I mean, this team towards the end of the year, when it mattered in the playoffs, played like the team I think everybody thought they were going to be. And so to me, it doesn't really tarnish the national title, but it is something that's going to linger with this team forever.
I don't think it tarnishes it, but I do think it takes something away from it because your goal as a Buckeye, your goal as a Wolverine, I would say first and foremost, or at least 1-1 is national title and win the game. And if you don't get the game piece done, that reflects on the other piece. It doesn't work the other way around, I don't think. And again, very different. I've seen the Woody Hayes quote. We've all seen it. Very different era of college football.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it still rings true. The only statistic that matters is how many times you beat them, whoever them is, right? Now, different season of college football where you kind of had to win a national championship, but that's also Woody Hayes. And also that's what the rivalry means. Mm-hmm. That's why we do this podcast, is because there is nothing like it for anyone outside of this. Texas and Oklahoma, yeah, sure. They both hate each other. Texas is not, it's not the same.
No,
it's not the same. Well, we lost Oklahoma, but we won the natty. It's natty. We don't even care. It's the same thing I said last week about any Michigan fan pretending like Ohio State winning the natty doesn't matter because we beat them. A fool or a liar. And every Buckeye saying, well, it doesn't matter that we lost to Michigan anymore. A fool or a liar. The number of, and again, because I go through and I read 1,000 things, this is not a shot. I love the work that these guys do. But 11 Warriors, fantastic site. Give them a follow. They're great. Two quotes that I don't get this. The senior class, despite going 0 for 11 on their goals before the college football playoff started, just kept swinging. Okay. I know there were no gold pants. I know there were no Big Ten championships, but I don't much care. That makes no sense to me. What do you mean you don't? There were no gold pants, but I don't care. That is a loser mentality.
Yeah, I don't understand that one. That's a loser
mentality.
The first one doesn't bother me.
Here's what I'll say. Ohio State, before the playoffs started, talked about de-emphasizing the game. You remember that whole conversation with Ross New York?
That was just the AD, though, right?
Yeah, that's your AD. De-emphasizing the game. And now afterwards, it's, we don't care anymore. You know what it smells like to me? And I'll say this on the Michigan side. It smells like a Brady Hoke era. It smells like Brady Hoke talking about how it's just another game and the lack of care that Michigan had. Why do you think Michigan struggled to care about that game? It was because they weren't winning it. So it's going to be this really interesting piece here where this fan base that wanted to launch your coach into the sun 6 weeks ago and is now crowning him king of college football, what does that look like moving into the next season?
That's a lot of talk from a fan base that did literally the exact same thing with Harbaugh at the 2020 season when everything was going wrong and you almost lost to Rutgers in triple overtime. the Michigan fan base was in the exact same boat.
Those are very different scenarios, though. Those are very different scenarios. Those were two completely different seasons, and it took Michigan years to kind of build up that, and also they were beating Ohio State along the way.
I mean, sure, from the game perspective, but I think when you're talking about specifically wanting to launch Ryan Day into the sun, I think that the fan bases were at the same point Michigan was with Harbaugh right before that Rutgers
But Michigan
game.
didn't crown Harbaugh national champion 6 weeks later. Like that wild pendulum swing.
Sorry, it took you guys longer.
That wild pendulum swing. You have not beat Michigan in 2,000 days. That wild pendulum swing is one of the weird things about this new college football format, though, right? Is because you can lose the game and still go win the whole thing. That wasn't happening before. In all likelihood, we nearly had it in 2022 with the Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, TCU matchup. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what this game looks like, because you may end up playing this team. You could play this team 3 times.
Which, see, and that's the part where I look.
Going to be really. That's
the part where I look at it and it starts to tarnish the game itself, because I just don't know if I love that. I don't know. I like seeing you guys once a year.
Get one shot.
And you get one chance. I don't like this whole you could get a redemption shot. Maybe that'll change when it actually happens. Who knows? Maybe beating you twice will make it sweet.
And here's the thing. You know, if you know Michigan wins in the regular season, then you win in the postseason, or vice versa. Whoever wins the second one's going to say, "Well, the first one didn't matter."
Yeah,
why?
It feels
because you can't let your friends ever have nice things.
And it feels
ever.
weird, but it's almost like that day to me, and I'm sure you feel this way. That day's like a holiday for me.
Oh, of course it is.
I mean, I block everything off. I was explaining to a Notre Dame media person this past weekend. We were just talking, just kind of hanging out, eating some lunch before the game,
as you do,
just hanging out. And he was actually with the Haitian Times, so he was there reporting on some of the players of Haitian descent.
Oh, that's
really,
awesome.
really awesome. You should check them out. He was a great guy. And he was just asking kind of about my backstory and all that. And I said, I've been a Buckeye fan since 2000, which feels weird that it's going to be 25 years of fandom, which makes me feel old. And he was just kind of asking,
my friend.
Look, my body's feeling it after being in a car for 9 hours, and I had to be immobile yesterday. But we were just talking through the backstory of our passion for sports, and I was sharing a little bit about my history with the Buckeyes, and just talking through him. And he looked at me and he was like, "I can tell, man. Like, you can tell the passion that you have for this fan base." And he said, "I can already sense the passion that Buckeye fans have for their team. It's not like anything I've ever seen." And it's true, and it sounds arrogant to say, but Michigan's the same way.
It is. That's
these
why this
fan
rivalry,
bases around this game, around their football team, it's built different. You wake up in Columbus and they wrap you in a blanket with scarlet on it. Yep. And I don't know if did they do that for your kids?
No, they
is that only for the week of the game?
They will do that for the week of the game.
That's what I thought.
Which is why I would not let my kids be born at an Ohio State University hospital. So
that's valid. That's how deep that right there is how deep the rivalry
there
runs.
You go, right?
But it's just true.
The fact that we're even having a conversation about, hey, would you rather win one game or a national championship? The fact that that's even a debate tells you how much that game matters. And I think for both of us, even if we disagree on maybe some specifics, betrays the answer.
We reached the same point.
Which is, that game means more.
And I think for me, as I'm looking at how the new format is, and that game feeling like a holiday, and some people probably think this is awesome. If you end up playing that team 2 or 3 times, it's almost like if you had Christmas 2 or 3 times in a year. Like, it sounds awesome at first, but eventually it gets kind of old. Yeah. You want that one special day to yourself to experience that. It's just something about that starts to kind of mess with it. Maybe my opinion will change when they actually play. But
if you lose the game, you don't get a redemption shot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get, and that's even though it's not against Michigan, that's really where, the weirdness especially on the Michigan side, and I think on the Ohio State side too, of the image of Jack Sawyer, crying and yelling and screaming, whatever, and then hoisting a trophy 6 weeks later or whatever. Why that's such a weird parallel is this is a whole new territory for college football. Like, that happened, and so did that one. The Ryan Day deer in the headlights, what happened thing, and Ryan Day holding up the national championship trophy happened 2 months apart. Mm-hmm. Those things both happened. And that's just so if you're trying to what box do I put this in? Well, you're going to have to hold both. And that's the beauty and pain of this rivalry is Michigan has every right to say, we beat you and we still own Ryan Day. Yep. And Ryan Day can say, and I've got a trophy. Yep. and nobody's going to be happy because you can't let your friends have anything.
100%. I do have a couple more questions that I want to get through real quick. Ryan Day specific.
This is such a tough one because I know what's coming.
We can keep this kind of brief.
Okay.
We talked about it obviously before that right after the game, tension was high. Everybody was calling for his job. And he, in my opinion, has proven himself to be what people thought he should be. Ohio State, their past 3 coaches have all brought a national title to the program. Ryan Day goes through an absolute gauntlet and ends up on top of the college football world. Where does Ryan Day now rank among other college football coaches currently? The ones that are currently coaching, where is he ranking in your opinion?
I don't even know, man.
I think for me, he's got to be top 2 at this point.
Top 2?
I think he's got to be.
I mean, he's got to be in the top 5.
I would say bare minimum top 3.
I mean, I don't know. He's somewhere in the top 5. I don't know that I'd have him up that because again, here's where the struggle is, right? The struggle is a coach just won a national championship. And yet the other massive thing you're supposed to do is not getting done. He's
got to get over that hump.
And again, my question would once again be, well, if not this year, then when is he going to do that? I don't know. But I mean, you also have to be, even in the midst of a rivalry, be somewhat rational and go, I mean, he's a top 5 coach.
Yeah.
And yet come November, and again, I think it might've been Klatt talking about this, but like come November, he's going to be coaching for his job again? Question mark. Like, and again,
if he loses, that whole conversation's being revisited.
It's too early to say that 2 days after a national championship. And it sounds insane, but also it's not because you're 1-4. So I don't know, but he's somewhere in the top 5. Has to be.
My last question to kind of wrap this up. I'll do 2 parts actually, because I've got 2, but I'll split them up. So my first one is outside of the game, obviously, and I'll exclude the game and the championship.
Sure, yeah.
What's been your favorite moment for your team specifically for the 2024 season? What is something that really stood out to you? And then the second part is it's going to be super early, but outside of your team, because it's easy for us to go, Ohio State, Michigan, who are you crowning 2025?
Please stop.
Let's do it. Why not?
This is like the betting odds where it's like,
why not?
Hey, Ohio State's 8.5 point favorites over Michigan.
Who cares?
In 10 months?
Who cares? Shout it out. Who is your way too early 2025 national champ? And then what was your highlight of 2024?
I mean, I'll be dead set honest with you. Like my pick is Michigan right now. I know you said don't pick your team. I'm going to take Michigan right now. If I'm going to pick outside of them, I mean, it's got to be, it's hard to go against Texas, right? I mean, Arch Manning there.
You're going to go
and
my pick
Texas?
is honestly going to surprise you.
Okay.
I think for me, it's I would obviously go Ohio State. I think even despite all them the talent they're going to have to reload, they've got guys coming in that I believe can get the job done.
Michigan and Ohio State will both be in the mix.
They're going to be great. The line being like 8.5 or 9 was outrageous to me.
10 months before we don't even know who's on the team.
But if I'm going with the trend that I've seen as of late, where players on really talented teams are making their return, significant players that you looked at as sure, clear-cut NFL talent returning, I'm going Penn State. I think Drew Aller, Singleton, Katron Allen all returning.
I think it's a good pick.
I think if there is a year for Penn State to finally showcase themselves as an elite team, and you've seen it in years past, Michigan coming in with a loaded senior class, getting the job done. Ohio State and Notre Dame both making the championship game where they had a handful, a large group of guys that were 5th-year seniors, 4-year seniors that were coming back, trying to win it all. And that's exactly what Penn State is doing right now. Yep. You saw how close Penn State already was this season.
Yeah.
It just, and I hate to say it, and I will die on the hill that I think Frames Shanklin will make his yearly appearance in some game, preferably at Ohio State when they travel to Columbus. But that is a team that I'm looking at and I'm going, they have the dangerous players. Drew Aller's going to have another year of experience. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton aren't to be slept on. And that defense is always going to be really good.
Yeah.
And so if I'm picking somebody outside of Ohio State, as much as it pains me to say, I'm going to go Penn State.
I think Oregon's in there too. I mean, listen, the Big Ten is
what
Big
transfer
Ten's
quarterback are they going to have come in?
Real quick, I'd say my outside of the game, My two moments from this season would be the USC win for Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Got to take that in person. You were there as well. Was just fantastic. Phenomenal. The Kalel Mullings run, getting to witness that in person. Fantastic. The way they punched it in at the end. And that's just fantastic. That's the beauty of college football, unless you're USC. And then the other one would just be beating Michigan State again, because again, one of the worst Michigan teams in a decade, and you still beat Ohio State, you still beat Alabama, and you still beat Michigan State. And that's just so funny to me. Davis Warren is a rival slayer, and I love it.
My answer is going to surprise you, because my favorite memory is actually also the Michigan USC game. I'm going to be objective here, and it's going to be purely from a media standpoint, because let's be honest, a majority of the Ohio State games that I got to be in attendance for were against games like Western Michigan, Akron.
The home slate was not
I did
great.
go to the Penn State game. That was a crazy experience. That definitely lives up to it. I was on the field for that, which was just crazy. I was at the home game for Tennessee. That environment was just insane. Those are really cool things. But just from a pure media guy, being on the field at the Michigan USC game, as close of a game as it was, having Donovan Edwards running directly at me, some of the shots that I got are some of the most memorable shots that I was able to grab this season.
At Rival Pod, check out the reels on Instagram.
So yeah, from a pure media standpoint, just as somebody that got to be on the field for a handful of really big college football games, I got my best stuff at that game. Yeah. And just as a outsider, as much as I wanted Michigan to lose that game, as an outside football fan, that game was almost everything you wanted.
Yeah.
It was comparable to the Notre Dame Ohio State game last year.
Like a near walk-off.
Where it came down right to the very, very end. I mean, just an all-around phenomenal game. And to be honest, I love Michigan Stadium. I know Buckeye fans are
you
probably...
heard it here first. JP, big Michigan guy.
No. Ohio State fans probably just vomited hearing me say that. But I genuinely... Being at the Big House is cool. It's a fun place to go watch a game, and it'll be even funner when Ohio State gets to go there next year and win.
Ryan Day winning a national title and then having his golf cart slam into a brick wall feels like a great metaphor for heading into the offseason. We will, by the way, want to make sure this is clear. We will have episodes throughout the offseason. It won't be every week, of course.
Yeah.
But we are going to continue to have episodes. Usually we do about once a month. So make sure you stay subscribed. Make sure you follow on Instagram and Twitter. We've got content going up every single day there at Rival Pod. And be sure to check out rivalpod.com. You want to support, make sure you tell your friends. We've got a bunch of really cool stuff planned this offseason heading into 2025. Real excited for you to get to see it. We're excited to figure out what it is. I'm joking. You got it.
We have a plan, obviously.
We have the concept of a plan.
Unlike James Franklin, we have a plan. It's
unlike
fine.
Marcus Freeman kicking the field goal down 16.
We know what we're doing.
We do
it's
have
fine.
concepts of a plan. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. We'll talk to you soon.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.